All right, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Southern Comfort Podcast. Kevin, how you feeling, my brother?
I'm feeling good, man. The government back open.
It is back open. It is back open. Um, I don't know if that means we'll pass anything, but it is back open. For those of you who have been, I don't know, in a coma for the last 10 days, the government did reopen this past, was it Thursday?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but you know what? We still have Democrats who are fighting themselves like a family reunion gone wrong.
mhm.
President Trump is beefing with his beach blonde built body buddy Marjorie Taylor Greene. And yet and still, I don't think we still gonna be worse off in healthcare at the end of the day, right?
Well, I think that was a lot of the big point of the contention. Like a lot of people felt like the Democrats, quote unquote, folded. Specifically, 8 Democrats in the Senate that negotiated and worked with Republicans to get the government back open. They did that over the objection of a majority of the Democratic caucus who wanted to see us kind of push a little bit longer for healthcare. Um, but I personally, and I kind of alluded to this too in some of our previous episodes, but I personally think that we had gotten as much leverage as we were going to get. Like these guys are not going to um vote the way we want them to vote on healthcare, right? These guys' entire record has been trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And also, we were negotiating with the Senate, right? Thune can agree to it. The leader in the Senate can agree to it, but that has nothing to do with what the House of Representatives might bring.
Right.
And so we raised it as an issue. We elevated it to an issue. We got a commitment to do another vote. And people should understand Democrats were putting up votes during the entire shutdown around healthcare, and every time the Republicans said no. So we were never going to get there. And it just, to me, the longer you leave it shut down, the harder it is for the public to distinguish between the two parties, and they just start to blame both of them. But if you look at the polling and the data, right, more people trust us on healthcare. They definitely are aware, like the point was made, that the Republicans are the reason that your healthcare costs are going to go up. And so we achieved that, and we're going to get a vote on it. And so I hate the internal kind of warfare that kind of happened as a result of that, but I think it was the right call.
When we look at it and we say, did Democrats fold too early? Um, you know, should we have held out longer? I think of Kenny Rogers' song. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to
When to
fold
fold
'em,
up,
know
know
when to
when
walk
to walk
away,
away, know
know
when to
when to
run.
right?
You
And
never count your money
exactly. While you're sitting at the
at the
table.
table.
Um, and I think it's perfect, right? Like the polls show that the public felt like the Republicans were to blame for the shutdown, right?
Hmm.
So you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And we walked
Hmm.
away with something, right? And I
Hmm.
think we have the momentum is on our side.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
we now know where we can place the blame. We've shown, look, we came to the table with negotiations. We came back to Washington and try to talk and discuss and see what we can get out of this.
Hmm.
We're trying to fight for your well-being, your health care. We're trying to fight for your pockets, how much money you're spending to try to stay alive.
Hmm.
And yet and still, these groups of individuals are blocking it. They don't care
Hmm.
about you. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about, your safety, your health care, your paychecks. They
Hmm.
just care about protecting the top 5%, 2% people, the millionaires and billionaires, right? Um, Now, with that being said, we're walking away from the table. We still can't get our own selves in order with the infighting, right? The infighting is now what's tripping us up. And so you have a mother-daughter dueling,
Hmm.
right? Like and you called me about that when you was like,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
look at this shit, Rich. Come on. What is this?
Hmm.
I want us to kind of talk about that for a few minutes about
Mm.
how we continue to shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to trying to get on the same page, stay on message, and stick to a plan and strategy.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and look, and this is why, again, I don't want people to feel like we lost. When you are the minority party, right, and you don't control anything, the only thing you can do is just talk shit and try to influence the agenda to get your party back in the majority so that you can actually pass things into law. And we accomplished that with healthcare, right? And there's going to be a vote on extending healthcare, right? They were never, before the shutdown, they had plenty of votes to take it away, but they were not trying to do any votes to talk about extending healthcare until we force the issue and put it front and center for the American people to see. And so we should feel good about that. We also got concessions, right, for federal workers to be able to get their jobs back, and we at least got a portion of the federal government funded through the entire next year. But most of it though, it only goes through January 31st. So in a few months, once we get past the holidays and everything else, we still might be right back here. But I do think that, Republicans will think twice before shutting the government down, which gives us more leverage as these negotiations continue. So the fight is not over. And we are stronger and better positioned now because of how we played it so far in this shutdown. But of course, because we're Democrats, of course, there's infighting. You're talking about the Shaheen family. So Senator Shaheen of New Hampshire, um, one of my favorite states. And she was in that gang of 8, right? That helped negotiate the deal, that reopened the government.
And talk about the Gang of Eight, right? Like
Yeah.
the 8 people who cross the lines
hmm
aren't up for reelection until 2028, and some of them aren't even seeking to run for reelection when their time is up.
yeah, like they are retiring. A lot of
Hmm.
them are retiring. A lot of them are from battleground states. The majority are. Right? And so I just felt like they're a little bit more acutely in tune, right, to the potential downsides of extending this thing out. And I think specifically of someone like Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada, right? Nevada is always like whenever you got a tough economy, like it's always the state that just sees things go off the rails. And so you're starting to take back SNAP benefits, like they're hit hard and they're getting it, right? And so it wasn't surprising to me that she was one of the ones sitting at that table to do it. And then you had like Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine State, Virginia, is a lot of federal workers. So once he was able to negotiate some protections for his constituents, he was like, all right, I'm going to open it back up. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that the Republicans want to do, but we live to fight another day. This is what happens when you're in the minority party. And so I don't understand fighting other Democrats about that because we all have the same position on healthcare. We're all for it. We all want to do it, right? But it's the how, right? And the how is you have to win majorities, you have to win elections, and then you can influence what actually gets brought to the floor and what actually gets put into law. Because let's understand why what we're talking about exists in the first place. It exists because Democrats were in power
Hmm.
at the time and we passed it into law and people got health care as a result of it, right? So there's no need to be doing the Democratic thing and fighting stuff. But the Shaheen example that you brought up is particularly funny is because you have Senator Shaheen, who's retiring, former governor of New Hampshire as well. Her daughter is running for a House seat in New Hampshire at the same time her mom is retiring.
Hmm.
And now she's all on CNN and everywhere else talking about my mom doesn't get it. And she's saying stuff like, this is personal for me because of my child. So you think the senator don't know that about her grandchild? You think she didn't think about that right before she did it? So I just think it shows it's naive. I think it's unnecessary to inject that into the narrative. And it's particularly odd and kind of craven to me when you're talking about your own mama.
Right. And so in that, right, like one of the congresswomen from Nevada,
hmm
right, Susie Lee, she said it perfectly. She told people in a closed door meeting, she said, stop pissing on each other's legs and start pissing on Republicans. Right? Right? And so when you're not in the minority party, when you're the minority party, your only power comes from unity. And when you publicly show like this disarray, the narrative switches from, Republicans were the ones to blame now to Democrats are in disarray,
Right.
right? And you
Right.
don't want that. You don't need that. You can't have that. Not when you're getting ready to go into, the next year and you need all the wins you can get to try to win back, coming back into the majority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And we need to remember one of the things that we got right with the shutdown was the message discipline, right? And we need to lean back on that as a party, right? And so post shutdown, we got a little bit of away from that. There was the healthcare example, and then there were a couple of other odd things that were happening too, that kind of created this sort of warfare messaging, right? That the Democrats were in disarray, and really kind of took the focus off of the Republicans. And I know something we're gonna get into here too is also the Epstein files. Again, the Republicans are like literally imploding, and you guys are fighting each other. Like it's crazy,
Right.
crazy.
Right. Like it should have been, we got the government back open. Republicans don't care about your health care. They don't care about your children. Point in case, pedophiles.
Right.
Dot, dot, dot. Right?
Right.
Take it
They care
away.
they care more about protecting pedophiles than your health care. That should have been the only message that every Democrat was saying. And I ain't got to go on CNN to tell you I'm upset with you for negotiating, opening up the government. I'll see you in the hallway. I'll be like, hey, bro, I think you should have held out a little long. Appreciate that. But you know what? We here now.
They'd
You
rather,
know?
the message could have been, they'd rather protect you from pedophiles than protect you from sickness and
Yeah.
guns in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it works with anything, right? Like, I mean, insert any issue, right? They'd rather protect you, protect pedophiles than protect, your right to be able to own a home, right? Or to have affordable groceries or whatever, right? It works. But the point is, right, that should have been what every Democrat was saying. And eventually we got there, right? But right after the shutdown, we were looking a little raggedy. We were.
I
But,
mean, we
you
were
know.
looking raggedy going into the shutdown. we we got some shine about ourselves, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And then we go back outside and try to play in the mud with the pigs.
Yeah,
Why? Why?
yeah.
When we could have stayed our asses in the house like your mama told you,
Mhm,
right? Holiday season coming up, are you gonna be on the naughty or nice list? Do
mhm,
you want that gift?
mhm,
Because they're giving us a gift wrapped with a nice little bow,
mhm.
and yet we're still trying to go out there and fight for a lump of coal.
Well, and then also, again, right, not having that unity. Again, the big problem with leaving the shutdown the way that it just leaving the government shut down is, again, eventually the public can't distinguish and don't care anymore about whose fault it is. They just want somebody to do something. When we start to fight ourselves over the government being reopened, right? You're further muddying the waters for the public. Everybody just sounds like a mess and they don't like either party, right? And we got to understand that while we did just have big wins, right? We did just do really well in the last election. That was, yes, we deserve credit for having message discipline around affordability, recruiting really good candidates, right? That is a big part in sort of meeting the moment, right? Preparation meets luck is preparation when preparation meets opportunity. We did do that, but don't confuse that again for people like loving Democrats. They don't. They just think the Republicans are a mess now and we're just the other party. And so we have to keep presenting a real choice for people. And to do that, we got to look like, and we actually have to have our shit together. And
Mhm.
right after the shutdown, we didn't look like we had our shit together. They're like, okay, they fighting with each other. I'm happy the government's back open, but instead of us kind of leaning into that and keeping the heat on the Republicans, we kind of got into the mess too. And like I said, it looks like we got it back together. But moving forward, where we're still going to have more fights about these issues, like we need to maintain message discipline, and you can't be taking shots at your other folks. And even AOC, right? They were talking about different primaries and stuff like that. She didn't take the bait. She was like, I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that's something we should be talking about, even though I hope she primary Schumer. But we'll see.
Well, we can get to that, but right, like not taking the bait when right now the bait should be focused on kitchen table issues, the cost of
Mm-hmm.
groceries, healthcare, insurance, jobs, the housing market, right? You name it, there's issues there. But I think for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about, probably the next month, we're going to be talking about what's in the Epstein's files and what's not in the Epstein files, right?
What was redacted?
What was redacted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For those who are not following us on our YouTube channel, I did the air quotes redaction there. And I want people to understand this right now. These files will be released. You're going to see a lot of black marks.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. That's the other part of this. There was a vote to release them, but we don't know that they're going to be released because, right? We should tell people why we don't know that, right? Because Donald Trump said he ordered his Justice Department, which again, this is very unusual.
Here you go. Yeah.
Right. Usually the president appoints the attorney general, but the Justice Department is like its own thing. They're not the president's personal attorney.
Correct.
They're the referees, right? The president doesn't give them directives, right, on things like that. But Donald Trump said, y'all need to investigate the Democrats and see what they got to do with Epstein. And so what that means is that if they open up an actual investigation, they can say, hey, we can't release these files right now because we're still doing an investigation. And so a lot of people want to say, well, y'all knew about the Epstein files under Joe Biden. Why didn't Joe Biden just release the Epstein files when he was president? Because at the time, they were still adjudicating Ghislaine Maxwell, who was, Epstein's co-conspirator here. And so there was an active investigation going on. And so you can't release the evidence while the investigation is going on. So there's a concern because Donald Trump tweeted at Pam Bundy, hey, you need to investigate this. She responded, right?
There's nothing to
on
investigate.
Truth Social, right? That she was just like, yes, sir, I'll get right on that. And so the legislation has been passed in Congress. The president has signed it. And it says that they have 30 days to release the files. So what we got to do is see within that 30 days if Pam Bundy, the attorney general, comes out with the okie doke and it's like, we can't do it, or I can only release these pages that talk about Bill Clinton. I can't release the other pages, though, that talk about my boss, or whatever it is, man. So I think we're going to get something, right? The House Oversight Committee, because of the Democrats, right? They've released information that they were able to subpoena and get from the Epstein estate. That's how we know some of the stuff we do know about what's out there already. That is because of the Democrats. And so we'll see how much more we get, but it is not a given, right? Like these guys might all the way do another okie doke. And you might not see nothing, bro.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So we got 30 days. So this will take us well into right before the new budget has to be renegotiated in January, right? And so now it develops a whole nother ball of wax and problems and issues. So healthcare is going to be back up to discussion. We're going to start seeing little inklings and stories of what's in the Epstein files starting to get released.
Hopefully.
Right? Hopefully. I mean, we already got one with Bubba.
Yeah.
Who knows who Bubba is?
And the Democrats have other emails. So you're right. They only released like a little. I mean, they got 30-some thousand documents. They only released a little bit. So yeah.
So in this soap opera of, as the world turns or as the hill, whatever you want to call it, in this, political spectacle that we have going on, right?
Mhm.
It's going to draw out. It's going to draw out. Um, that will start spilling over into state legislators. Watch how some certain states, particularly ones who have gubernatorial races coming up. For instance, in
Mhm.
Georgia,
Mhm.
they're talking about canceling state income tax, right? So you're going to start seeing bits and pieces play out that could benefit in some key battleground states. You're going to start seeing some things that play out in key congressional races that
Mhm.
we need to kind of flip and try to get back in the majority.
Mhm.
Um, we're going to start seeing the strategy game play out in terms of what's going on with Epstein files. But again, this situation, the Epstein files, is not enough to take over what we need to take over in Congress. And right. And so that's where we always talk about the year round engagement needs to kind of start happening and happening now as we get ready to enter a new year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this controversy is going to play out well into spring and summer of 2026
Yeah. And like you said, they're imploding, right? So we need to look like the party with a plan and
with
an
a
agenda. We
plan.
need to keep forcing votes on things like healthcare and affordability and everything else, and keep making these guys say no to that. And we need to speak, from the same hymnal, right? Or sing from the
Hmm.
same hymnal, and speak the same language on this, because that's how we won so big this year, right? A couple weeks ago in 2025, right? Everybody, no matter what they was running for, they were hitting the same message, the same topics, and the public is still there, right? And Epstein files, yes, it's going to be there. It's going to be a part of the dialogue, right? But that's not a core issue. It does take down their brand quite a bit, right? And it does dial it up and motivate Democrats very much to want to just kind of vote for change. But what really moves the needle for us, right, is having a very focused message around affordability. That is where people are, right? That's how we lost in 2024. That's how we won in 2025. And that's how we'll win in 2026. And keep moving forward.
Listen, it's how Mondani won, right?
It is. Yeah.
Right.
And I just want to say this because Trump keeps calling him Kwame. And he means it in a derogatory way, just like he used to always say Barack Hussein Obama. But
It helps.
I think one of the coolest ass things about Mondani is that his middle name's Kwame.
Right. It only
I
helps.
love it.
It only helps.
Oh, I love
Right.
it.
Because
I love it.
for the ones that didn't vote for him,
Right.
for the ones who didn't know to vote for him or just didn't
Mm-hmm.
vote, period, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They hear Trump calling him Kwame.
They're like,
Really?
hmm, hmm,
Okay. I
okay.
also thought it was funny that there were people in Kentucky who were calling their Secretary of State, trying to figure out how can they not vote for Mondani in the race.
Yeah. Or they were trying to I think they were trying. I read one story about this, and it should have made more news, but I think they were trying to figure out how they could vote,
Right.
how they could vote in the election to stop Mondani, and
But
they're
that
like, "You can't."
but that lets you know what type of
What we dealing with?
right. And this is to our Republican MAGA viewers that we have that subscribes to this that I'm learning. They like to
We do.
comment, y'all are fucking idiots. How about that?
Oh Lord.
I just said it. Yes, my name is Kevin Harris. um I mean, but listen, diving into our reality show of Real Housewives on Capitol Hill,
Mm-hmm.
right? We cannot write this script because now, President Trump is now battling his BFF, the woman who showed up for him when he took his
Mm-hmm.
mugshot here in Fulton County jails, the woman who was
Mm-hmm.
throwing rallies for him, the American First rallies with Matt Gates. She was his partner in crime when he was facing court situations. Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She is him and her are
Georgian.
now a Georgian. North Georgia, North Georgia.
Mhm.
You know, she lives an hour away from the Tennessee border,
Mhm.
30 minutes away from the Tennessee border. So, you know, they are now beefing. Um, and it solely started because he didn't support her in her pursuit to run for higher office here in Georgia. She wanted to run for U.S. Senate or governor. And he basically told her to stand down, told her no. And, you know, the saying, hell have no fury like a woman scorned.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
is now out there. She started to try to soften her image up a little bit.
Mhm.
She's talking about bringing down the political temperature when it comes to um, very racy comments to her political opponents. She's been pushing for the release of the Epstein files. She's been talking about affordability and the cost of living issues. She's changing her tune, and now Trump is out there and he's calling her a traitor, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
she's not MAGA anymore. She's not, you know, she's not a MAGA enough for Donald Trump, apparently.
Mhm. Mhm.
In the state, she still has, you know, overwhelming support from her constituents, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure across the country, there are probably some MAGA people who are still supporting her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but strategically, you know, this isn't good for Trump,
Mm-mm.
nor is it good for Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I just wonder with this MAGA infeuding, will Democrats even try to seize the opportunity to try to either a push someone to get her out of Congress or
Mhm.
you know use that to kind of to capitalize and allow her mouthpiece to continue to kind of spread or sow division within the Republican Party.
Well, aside from the strategy of all of it, just as a, as as operatives, we're spectators too. For people who's like politics is boring, I'm like, nah, you just gotta know what you're watching. It's been quite entertaining to see this whole saga unfold with Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I actually think she deserves some credit on a couple fronts. Number one, I think strategically, right? Like, I think the way she's handled this, she's not some crazy hack. She actually has some political acumen. Um, she managed to get to the right of Trump with the MAGA bait. Like how many people have figured out how to out MAGA Trump? She did. The MAGA people are with her. They have the opposite position on this stuff that Trump does. She managed to out MAGA Trump on something which I don't think has ever happened since Trump emerged on the political
Well, the student has now
scene.
become the teacher.
Right. And the other thing that I would say too is like, she has figured out a way in some ways, in a lot of ways, to really, you moderate her image, like a little bit. Like she's
Uh-huh.
given herself an on ramp here to possibly appeal to a broader electorate, potentially, right? And so I don't know that how it plays out for her, long term. I don't know if she's still interested in a statewide office in Georgia at some point. But I think she's better positioned today for that than she ever was before. And I think a part of it is because the political acumen that she's displayed dealing with Epstein. Now, um, so I think that yeah, I think she actually has come out ahead
Well,
here.
I think it's you know you said it, but what's
Mhm.
interesting is, and this just goes to show you that a lot of the Republicans who are in office are full of shit because here you are who has a woman who is still saying everything that her constituents are talking about.
Mhm.
Healthcare, you know,
Mhm.
she's talking about the Epstein files. She's
Yep.
talking about um, uh, cost of living, the
Mhm.
affordability. Those everything that her constituents are talking about. They're just Republicans, right? So she's going against the grain, and she's standing up against Trump. And we've kind of already seen this once again in Georgia, that's making waves with Jeff
Mhm.
Duncan, the
Mhm.
former Republican lieutenant governor who stood up against Trump, who's
Mhm.
now running as a Democrat, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
only
Mhm.
thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't and hasn't done that Duncan has apologized and said what he did was wrong.
Mhm.
She's not going to say that, but she is starting to move to the right.
Triangulating.
She,
Yeah.
yeah, she's
Yeah. She's
triangulating.
triangulating. Yeah.
Um, And so the question is, who's going to win the MAGA hearts? And all she needs to be concerned about is the people in Georgia. She doesn't need to be concerned about the rest of the country because,
No, but again, she's put herself in a position to where she can raise money from
uh,
for MAGA
uh-huh,
all across the country here because of how she's positioned herself on this. And people got to remember too, Trump does have a very strong hold on the base still, but he still only has approval rating of 40%. So that means he's lost some erosion, right? Even among Republican voters, some MAGA voters, right? But there's still a lot of people who voted for him and were a part of his coalition that have kind of pulled back a little bit. And she's positioned herself to be able to capture some of that and possibly be one of the most influential Republicans in Georgia. Whereas before all of this, she was like this pariah. And you just kind of, you didn't want her against you, but you didn't necessarily want her going anywhere with you. Now it's kind of like, okay, right? If you're on the Republican side to be with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, not everybody, right? Not everybody. She's definitely getting death threats and all this other stuff that's happening too because of her positions on this. But I think overall she's shaken it up a little bit and she's put herself in a position that I think is stronger for her long term, and I think she deserves some credit for that. But what I don't want people to do though is because of her position on this one issue and because she's saying some stuff now, to excuse a lot of what she's said and done in the past, which you said correctly, right? She's not apologized
right.
for at a minimum, right? And so I don't want people, putting her on a pedestal by any stretch of the imagination. But in this one isolated situation around the Epstein files and affordability and stuff like that, I think she's shown incredible political acumen, and you got to give her props. I mean, you don't have to, but because I can see a lot of people being like, this is a very vile person, so fuck her. But, yeah.
I mean, for the time being, you need to use it to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
We
Yep.
we
Yep.
know we know Trump is about settling scores and maintaining his image, right? So the last thing that Trump wants to do is lose anything to a woman, regardless if it's Republican or Democrat, right? He doesn't want to get outstaged, outshined, out politically maneuvered by a woman. So I wonder how far will he go in terms of trying to bury Marjorie Taylor Greene and realizing he's going to do more damage and cause more harm and damage than actual good.
I don't know. And, Trump has a very long memory in terms of people that he feels like have wronged
Uh-huh.
him and didn't, play ball the way he thought they should play ball. So it'll be interesting to see. But that also opens up another question, too, when you see this kind of breach that I think has happened, right, against the hold that Donald Trump typically has on the Republican Party. The Epstein files have opened up a breach where they've just kind of broken away from him and shown some independence, right, that typically they've not been able to do. And so you got to wonder too, are some of them starting to look around the corner and say,
Exactly.
all right, this guy's not going to be president for 2 or 3 years, and then what?
Well,
Um,
and again, I've said it in previous episodes. I don't think he has that long in terms of because of his health, right? And so they realized that at some point they have to turn the page on Trump and move on to the next chapter. And are we starting to see that, right?
mhm,
But
mhm.
is it too late because you have the Epstein files, and if there's something that does come out that creates a dark cloud over well, there's already a dark cloud over his
Well, look,
administration.
if they actually release everything that's in it, I think based on how he's been acting and behaving, it's very clear that there's something in there
Right.
that's
Well,
right.
I, I,
So,
s- I say dark cloud
right.
is a calm over cloud over the
Yeah.
Trump administration, right? Like, I mean, listen, there's definitely shit in there, and
And I don't know. And it's like, here's the thing though, right? Like you've already been caught with a porn star. So like your wife already knows about that. So like how much more like is it like you worried about your wife knowing? Cause like how much more could you have? She
well,
already knows about the porn star.
first of all,
So you
she's
got other
married.
shit?
she's married to him, so she already knows how dirty and nasty he's already is. And I mean, let's be for real. Melania's a very beautiful woman. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Like, right
Well,
there,
yeah, I mean, look, Melania very clearly had options. I mean, you know, she could have married well. There are lots of rich people, right? That she probably could have married, but you know, their relationship is whatever it
it's a
is,
business
and
deal. It's a business deal.
well, you know, look, but I do wonder how much of that is driving it, right? Are there just different things? And it might not be that there's anything in it that's criminal, right? It could just be he's trying to protect like his family from knowing some, you know, he might have just been kind of stepping out there. And I don't know, but I gotta think that there's more than that because again, they already know about the porn star. So it can't just be that, oh, there's just more examples of me stepping out in the files. Like it got to
Right.
be a little deeper for him to be acting because he's real bothered.
Very.
He's so bothered by this. So like,
It listen,
I don't know. Like,
it it's an image thing to him, right? And it may come out that he may have a little Peter, right? Like, and he is so, you know, egotistical, right? Like any little small thread of an attack to his ego,
yeah,
it will hurt him.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
again, the man is already in poor health condition, right? This may be something that sends him over the edge. But I think
Well,
Republicans are starting to see that they need to figure out their, plan B to one,
yeah.
continue to keep MAGA in as a stronghold for them. But then what does it look like post Trump?
And the timing about all of this too that's interesting is you were starting to see stories starting to pop up about like 2028, right? And who was next up on the Republican side. And most people agree that like JD Vance for sure has the very early like read in, right, on that, right? And a lot of the speculation is really between him and like Marco Rubio, but like really it's JD Vance, right? But what's interesting about Epstein, depending on how long this stays out there as an issue, is it might give Rubio, as an example, like an opening, because people will say, well, JD Vance, did you push Donald Trump on the Epstein? Because he's been very quiet, right? And politically, I don't know why the hell would he jump on this grenade, right? But you know, people might press him on that, right? It's very, very similar to what we saw with Kamala, right? People wanted to know, did you see Joe Biden's mental acuity start to slip? And why didn't you say anything, at the time? This could be an example of that for JD Vance, and it could create an opening for someone else. But again, you know, I can't think of a time. It's rare that vice presidents succeed the president to begin with. But I can't think of a time though where a vice president though has lost a primary on
Mm.
either side, right? Running immediately following the person that they serve with. So I still think it's an uphill battle. But to your point about like the future and this thing a thing, right? It could be a complication for JD Vance on what should otherwise be a very smooth pathway to get in the nomination.
Well, I think, again, we have this soap opera is going to drum up a lot of potential candidates for on both Republican and Democrat side, right? Like,
Mhm.
who knows what one comes out in the files? Who knows what happens of the negotiations? I do think that as of today, um, another current sitting congressional member has announced that they won't seek reelection.
Mhm.
And I think, you're starting to see with the announcement of Nancy Pelosi not seeking reelection, you're going to start seeing a couple more dominoes start to fall. So as of today, November 20th, 37 incumbent members of the U.S. House of Representatives, 15 Democrats and 22 Republicans have announced that they will not seek reelection for 2026 elections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Breaking that down, um, 9 Democrats and 4 Republicans are retiring from public office. 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans are running for U.S. Senate. And there are a bunch of Republicans who are running for governor, and 1 Republican is running for attorney general, right? And so I raised the question, will we see another person on that list fall and him announce that he is not seeking reelection, or will they be challenged by someone in their district who's a current sitting congressperson? And I'm now talking about, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, AOC versus Chuck Schumer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? She has been very popular as of late. She's been saying all the right things in terms of messaging. She's been, playing well in the sandbox with her fellow Democrats, right? She started to kind of stray away from that, very progressive candidate person she was, you know, 4 years ago, now coming more towards the center, realizing, that she needs to start, getting on board. But will she challenge Chuck Schumer, or will Chuck Schumer realize, read the writing on the wall and decide not to seek reelection and step down?
I think all of the above. I think we definitely will see more retirements, and I also think we're gonna see like some primaries that where you will see some incumbents go down. So I think all of that is gonna happen. But specific to AOC and Schumer, um, I think that the higher likelihood is that he won't run at all, and that he will retire. But I think he really, really, really wants to be leader again. So, but I think that's what will ultimately happen, is that he'll step down, and that is what will be the opening for her. If I were advising her, though, what I would tell her to do, because there is some speculation and thought too that she might just run for president. I wouldn't tell her to do that right now, although I do think that could be very interesting.
I mean, she's in
Um,
her early 40s, late 30s.
no, she's 30s. I forget like how young she is, but she's in her 30s, right? Like she has
Mid to late 30s.
there's time,
Yeah.
right? She don't have to do it right now. But what I would tell her to do is basically I would tell her to run the same play that our buddy Cory Booker ran. And when Cory was confronted with similar dynamics against Frank Laudenberg wasn't getting out the way. He was older, in frail health. Cory just said, "I'm running." And he was mayor of Newark at the time. He just got in the race and said, "I'm running regardless. Either you're going to step down because you're going to see the pressure that I'm going to apply, or I'll just run against you in the primary and beat you. But I'm running. I'm getting in the race. I'm not waiting on you anymore." I think a similar play like that would work for her, and I think it's a very much a possibility Schumer ultimately would just cave, because I think he'd see the polling, he'd see how much money she was bringing, how much energy she was bringing in, and I think ultimately, whether it's through his resignation or her beating him in a primary, I think her holding statewide office that way and doing a term or two as not even a term or two as a senator, but just showing that she can win in that broad of a diverse electorate and operating in the Senate for a few years, I think all of that bodes well for her long term political future and ultimately being a very viable candidate for the presidency. And also, right, like Bernie Sanders and all of the energy with Bernie doesn't really have an heir apparent. And I think he's done everything he can to signal that he's very comfortable with that person being AOC.
AOC.
Is not Liz Warren. Liz Warren is more of a contemporary of his than an heir, right?
Right.
He's very comfortable with that person being AOC, and you see the energy when they travel around the country together, and they did a great job actually, right, of pushing a lot of the affordability messaging and stuff that we talked about. Like they were there first, right? They've done a very good job of kind of helping to capture that around the country. And so I think that she should, if I were advising her, I would just say, look, just run. he's either you're gonna beat him or he'll just say, you know what, I'm gonna retire before I get embarrassed.
Well, I think Senator Warren is I'm sorry, but her biggest issue is age, right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
that's really her biggest issue. I think the
She
other
don't
thing
move
is
like it though, boy. She don't
no,
move like it. But
listen,
yep.
that's a walking woman.
Hmm.
She walks her ass off. I think the other thing is right, like um, progressives are correct, right? The Democrats have been too cautious and too willing to negotiate away their leverage in certain situations. But like the establishment party or the establishment Democrats are also correct in a lot of the infighting we have kills a lot of our political power, and so there does need to be a balance. I think the other problem that we have is there isn't a succession plan to replace Chuck Schumer in terms of leadership, right? Like,
Hmm.
what does that look like? Um, and the hard truth is, Democrats do need new leadership,
Hmm.
but they need it through an actual succession plan, not a messy public fight. And I think that's where our biggest problem lies. We've never really truly had what a succession plan looks like in leadership. I think, with Hakeem Jeffries and the handoff between Pelosi and Jeffries, that kind of played out somewhat naturally, but yet and still, on the House side, like, say it.
It wasn't that natural. And the reason I say it wasn't that natural is because, Nancy Pelosi, she handles her shit. It wasn't gonna be no chaotic mess or whatever. She takes care of everything. And this is another one of those examples too, where I'm just gonna say it and I might get yelled at by the fellas, but like this is another one of those examples of where, most times women are just more organized and have their shit together than we do. So of course there was a plan for who was gonna succeed her.
Well, yes. But in all of that, right, like there's still also some natural tension in a big tent party.
Mm-hmm.
We have everyone from a Joe Manchin type to an AOC type, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the diversity is our strength when you're building coalition, but it's also our weakness when you need decisive action, right? And so,
Yep.
how do we kind of move forward, particularly going into 2026 and 2028, when we have new leaders who are trying to arise? We have old leaders who honestly are out of their league when it turns to trying to coalesce and get a new crop of voters out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as our leaders who have been in office a little bit too long or long in the tooth are kind of losing their political power. We're also losing political power in terms of voters, right? We have not established a new a new strength of voters, right? In Georgia or in Atlanta, I call them the Maynard Jackson voter,
Mm-hmm.
and they're dying out, right? Like we lose voters. There was an article that came out in the AJC that talked about uh, rural counties are losing more voters to death than they're gaining new voters in birth,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Which just speaks to a bigger issue.
Mm-hmm.
One, we're not bringing voters into the fold that actually vote consistently as much as we're losing the ones that are dying out because of
Mm-hmm.
age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't see the benefit to voting. They don't see anything happening if they do vote. So why should they vote?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And now we need to understand how to, one, get them into the fold, or if we're getting new voters into the fold, how we keep them into the fold and become a consistent drumbeat of voters to help change what we need to get changed.
Yeah, and I think the part of this too is really recognizing that that's really where your pathway to victory is. Either like we keep fighting over the same little slither of voters and not realizing that most of the opportunities are with people who are not are not engaged, right? But care, but we say, well, they don't vote, so they don't care about this stuff. That's not true. They do care about it, but they don't believe that voting is a viable option toward getting anything done because the system and some of the leaders let them down or don't come through. And so when you look at like Mandani, right, as an example, right, he's a testament to that in the sense that he won that race in large part because of all of the people that he brought into the process that typically before didn't vote in mayoral races.
Mm.
If the electorate stayed the same, if it was the same people that show up every time, then it would be Mayor Cuomo right now. The reason it's Mayor Kwame, because we ain't had Mayor Kwame since Kwame Kilpatrick in Detroit,
And we
but
saw how that turned
he's the
out.
yeah, and we saw how that turned out. But this is the new Mayor Kwame, right?
Mhm.
That we got right now, and the reason he's the new Mayor Kwame is because that brother expanded the electorate and got people involved and to believe that if I vote, I can see a change, and you that absolutely is the case, right? But you got to have leaders that follow through. And so, and that Stacey Abrams' whole theory of the case too, and a lot of the groundwork that she helped to lay for why Georgia is a competitive state now. And so we still kind of fight over that a little bit as a party, but we got to recognize, and the thing about it too, like I'll say this, even giving Donald Trump some credit, right? Trump gets that too. Like a lot of Donald Trump's success is like these are sporadic voters
Mhm.
that he just went and found, and they're voting for Donald Trump. Now I don't know that they'll stick around and just vote for Republicans once he's not on the ballot anymore, but he went and found people that were not in the process, and that's how he assumed a lot of his power or amassed a lot of his power, right? So I agree with you. We need to pay more attention to that. It's why, like we talk about all the time about year-round voter engagement. And the time to do that and engage those folks is actually not during election time, right? You need to actually sit with them in conversation and understand, right? And really dig in deep in their communities. And we need to make those investments as a party because that's where our gains are. So, for example, one of the big stories out of the New Jersey election, right, was how the Hispanic vote swung so much back to Democrats in that race, right? And you just look at demographically where the country is going, right? That is a community that Democrats need to be in conversation with, because there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think we got a really good case to make to them about why they should vote for Democrats and not Republicans. But you got to get in the community. They're not just going to go with you just to go with you, right? You got to show up too. And you know, that's something that I think we can learn from like the AOCs. I give Bernie credit on that. We were a part of the Obama campaigns and we did that, right? In his runs and in his bids as well. And so yeah, we gotta really get back. I don't want to say get back to it because we got to get back to that being a core part of our strategy. I don't want to say get back to it because I don't think we've still quite achieved it, but we got to make that more of a focal point, and understand that how big of a pathway that actually is to our victories, us getting majorities, and then you can dictate, right? Not just if we're gonna have votes on healthcare, you can actually pass healthcare.
Yeah. Well, I think before we wrap up, I think we need to do some key takeaways, and I want to do something a little different when I
Mm-hmm.
close out. Normally,
Mm-hmm.
we close out with a Mamba mentality, but I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
put that on pause.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think to our takeaways. One, Democrats need to stop fighting each other and focus on Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
You can't win by shooting your own, right? Right? You just can't. Um, Two, the Trump Marjorie Taylor Greene feud shows us that MAGA is loyal only on conditionals, right? Uh, Politicians who build their own brand can actually separate and survive off of Trump, right? Like she can break away from Trump and still build her own brand. And we might see that coming out of this, right? Like, um, I think three, leadership transitions need to be planned, right? Like what we are experiencing right now, what we're seeing right now, it doesn't need to be reactionary. Democrats need a real true succession plan, not a secular firing squad, right? Like, you know, um, and I think finally we just need to continue to focus on kitchen table issues,
Mm-hmm.
not just the Epstein files, not the reality TV dramatics, right? Like We need to be talking and discussing what people feel every day when they go to the gas pump, when they go to the grocery store, when they are looking at the bank account to see what can they afford to pay for and not pay for, what can they push to the next month, or what what needs to get cut, right? Like healthcare costs are rising, the cost of medication is rising, um, and people's everyday struggles are more important than sort of what goes on in the soap opera drama of what's on Capitol Hill.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I have to say right now. Anything you want to say before I switch to sort of how we gonna close this thing out?
Well, I got, just because 'cause I'm a nut, I got a few things I won't say. Um, but to that final point in particular, you're right. Like, one of the things I tell all my clients is that remember that voters are transactional. They really just wanna know what are you gonna do for them. They don't give a crap about you fighting with another politician or y'all doing they don't care about any of that stuff, right? They got families, they got stuff they trying to get done. Get to the point of what you gonna do for me and what's in it for me. And anytime they see that you're not focused on them, they lose interest. And so we have to remember that as a party. The other thing I wanna just say too, when you said what did you say MAGA was, conditional? Boy, what a condition. Pedophiles. We're not like, I mean, well, damn, if we can't get you on that, good Lord, what can we get you on? And honestly, man, it made me think about Doug Jones.
Mm.
And that race against Roy, that historic
The first,
campaign
yeah,
against Roy
yeah,
Moore. And a big part of the reason why that race was won, as you know very, very well, is because a lot of Republicans couldn't bring themselves to vote for a pedophile.
hmm
They didn't want to vote for the Democrat either. In their mind, Democrat, pedophile, same thing. So we got some work to do on our brand with them there. But to their credit, a lot of them were like, I just can't do it,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And so, you can give MAGA like a little credit, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to have conditions, I mean, that's a good one.
Okay. um, s- so typically we close out by giving away a Mamba Mentality Award, right? Someone who embodied what Kobe stood for on the court. Um, but you said something earlier, and I don't have a name for it. I mean, it could be jackass,
Hmm.
or just uh, in this case, Uncle Tom, maybe.
Mm.
Um, but you wanted to talk about one Stephen A. Smith, and the comments that he said about Michelle Obama. So I'm gonna give him the uh I don't know.
You can't say donkey of the day because that's
Yeah, well, I think
other
well,
people got that one.
he's a donkey too.
I
He's
know, man. There's that one.
um just the trash juice. Uh just like, you know, uh, a turd. He just like a
Mm,
just I've never liked Stephen A. Smith. I've never really been a fan. Um, and he said Michelle Obama came out and said that she was doing a interview on a podcast. She talked about her new book, and it came up a question about her running for president, and she was basically just said that America's not ready for a woman president, right?
mhm,
She
mhm,
didn't say black woman. She didn't say, she just said they're not ready for a woman president,
mhm.
right? And this fucking idiot loves to just attack the wrong people at the wrong time, right? This like last weekend, there was a state trooper who bumped into two South Carolina players going back into the
Yeah,
tunnel,
yeah,
right? And it just showed like he had all intent to just do some stupid shit like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You ain't heard Stephen A. Smith say anything about that in the realm of what he's in, which is sports.
Mm-mm,
Now, granted, we talk about sports, we talk about politics. He can, he has a platform where he can do that.
mhm,
But this idiot just came out and just said some ignorant dumb shit, right? And
mhm, mhm.
I'm just frankly getting tired of him. So I want to give him the first award, but I haven't named the award yet, right? Like, um, and I don't think we're gonna be able to name it now because I just want to come up with something so
Mm.
vile, like Red Fox used to be like, "You big dummy,"
Yeah.
and you say this a lot. Oh, we had a client and a candidate, and you would just call them, "Oh, dum dum."
Well, I mean, you know,
I don't know what we're gonna name this award,
I
but
don't know.
Stephen A. Smith gets it. Um,
I agree with you. He's irritating to me. He's irritating to a lot of people for all of the reasons that you just said. But what completely, got my level of aggravation up here recently is, first of all, what Michelle Obama was talking about. People asked her a question,
mhm,
and I'm very protective of the Obamas because of just everything that they are in the ways in which I've got to work the privilege, not just because of the history and the prestige, but because I've actually seen them as people when no one was around, and I know how they are. And I look at them and I always say that was 8 years, right? Like so many times, particularly as Black folks, we get people that get in these positions and stuff like that. And like there's a little bit of a crack, right? There's a little bit of something, like one of my heroes is Will Smith, right? But there was the slap, you know,
what's that?
Bill Cosby, right? There was the Quaaludes and everything else. We know Barack ain't in them Epstein files. He ain't in them, So all I know is for 8 years, they had they shit together. And it wasn't just them, even the dog. I'll talk about even the dog didn't bite nobody. Everybody was on point. Wasn't no crazy brother running around. None of that was the case, right? So I'm just very protective of them, and I just don't think they owe nobody else nothing. And so I don't understand going out of your way to go after her when she just answered a question that was asked of her. They asked her about running for president, and she said, "Don't even ask me about that because y'all ain't ready for a woman." Right. And it's not just her that thinks that. A lot of people think that, and a lot of women think that. And so he needs to stop talking about Black women, because it wasn't just Michelle Obama. It was also Jasmine Crockett that he's gone after too. He needs to stop talking about Black women, and Black men in particular need to defend them against the Stephen A. Smiths,
Mhm,
because he needs to stop talking
mhm.
about Black women. He bottom line, that's my whole point. He needs to stop talking about Black women.
He needs to stop talking.
That too. That too.
He needs to
That's
stop
fine.
talking, right?
But he seems to have a particular thing, right, about Black women that he wants to go and use his platform to attack them, and that shit needs to stop.
Yeah. So whenever we get into this and figure out a name for it, um, pieces of shit, basically.
Meet Me Outside award, like I don't These Hands
These
award.
things,
Get These Hands award.
something just like,
you know.
he stepped in it, and quite frankly, kiss my ass. Like, um, I just wanted to close out on that. I know we kind of talked about starting it, in the beginning, but I just wanted to close out and give the props to our former first lady
Yeah.
and probably future Madam President. She ain't doing it.
She
She
won't.
ain't, she ain't doing it.
She won't. But she is
She's too smart for it.
man, in some ways she's too honest for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's gonna tell you exactly what she thinks.
But in the meantime and in between time, next week is Thanksgiving. We'll do a special Thanksgiving episode, um,
From the table.
from the
So y'all
table.
can see all of what we eating. So
Yeah,
those of you
right.
who are aggravated talking about don't text me, no pictures of your plate and everything else, you're gonna see on the podcast what we eating. We gonna tape live from the table.
Yes, sure. We really appreciate y'all. Remember, like, subscribe, spread the word. We only have a few more episodes that we'll do before we shut it down. But really appreciate you guys for being a part of our podcast family. We are growing, we are building,
We
and
are.
we love everything, even to our our MAGA supporters who listen to us. Obviously, faithfully, they subscribe and they comment on our pages. I appreciate you, Jimmy Earl and Donnie B, and
I like bipartisanship, so
yeah,
I'll
sure,
take it.
yeah, any day of the week. But no, peace, everybody. Appreciate you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Peace.